Oh my God. I am genuinely reeling from the stasis that we just came out of past that game 2. Welcome back to the desk, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not even too sure what to actually say past what we're seeing, except has decided that he will be the sacrificial lamb for just all the jokes being pointed on to him. But before we can make fun of you, Cage, Destrux, this was GGA won that game technically, right?
This was a wild game to see unfold because we saw Golden Guardians try and give Wildcard a taste of their own medicine. They drafted for that early to mid game, and it popped off well on. You can see it from right there, right from the get-go. You have Yunbi just roaming, killing, going everywhere in the mid to early game, while Bradley was farming a mountain of gold for 30 minutes all the way to 70 plus CS. It doesn't matter. This game went on so long that CS difference didn't even make a difference.
Although I will say the big difference here was the difference in mid builds, because we saw how long LeBlanc had the gosh darn Dark Seal and could have built a Mage Eyes, but Yunbi decided instead not for me and traded it out eventually for a death cap. But when a game goes to 43 minutes, I mean, there's a lot of things that can be said, especially about this game. And every prediction I feel like I made about this game fell short and was subverted in, dare I say, Star Wars-esque ways.
Cage, based upon your point, I'm sure there's a lot of pain there too, but moving past all that, I'm really interested in more so just looking at the latter half of the game, right? Because the first half too, we saw GGA, they're forcing fights early. They were playing a much different early game than we saw before up against Wildcard, making sure that they could not really just build up the lead that they had previously up against them. But moving forward into past the 20-minute mark, even the 30-minute mark, by inches, it seemed like Wildcard was coming out on top of very small different fights. And that's there were two main factors here that I really want to point out: is Arrow's positioning and Brandini as a whole.
Yeah, Arrow's positioning was a little bit questionable in some spots. I don't think it was too bad. I don't think it was too egregious, but there were moments like over by the river, mid lane rampish area, where he just comes in and there's a very easy flank, there's a very obvious flank to get Arrow when he's by himself. And of course that last fight, I'm not really gonna put that fight onto Arrow and mispositioning. I'm gonna put it onto Niles and him going that deep to be able to lock down Arrow for that long for Newbie to get in and continue that layer of CC. Niles, I feel like, had big moments both in the early game and in the late game. Early game, we saw that perfect teleport timing where Wildcard were going for a dive. He shows up, one Gnar ult later, it's going to be Golden Guardians winning that team fight. And of course, the late game, I already stated with Arrow, I think Niles was definitely a star in this game.
I feel like there were a lot of things to say about Niles, especially how well he played versus game 1. He overextended a whole lot less. There was a fight around Dragon where he did miss a Gnar timing once, but overall, it felt like he was the one with the engages, and Golden Guardians Academy played more to their strengths of not over-engaging, playing calmly, and that's what allowed them that early game lead, but they started to falter in the mid-game. It was only because of another faltering on Wildcard Red in positioning that really allowed Golden Guardians Academy to come out on top here. I feel like this is a game of just complete messiness, where both teams look at this and say, take a breath, we're going to play it our way next time, and we're going to get it even cleaner, whether that's Wildcard Red being a little bit more aggressive early on, or if that's Golden Guardians Academy not really fumbling it in the mid game.
And that little fumbling that we saw in the mid game was actually kind of humorous to me in the long run, because we had this state where Golden Guardians were just running through Wildcard. Wildcard start to make the comeback, and a lot of it was through the laning. I did mention the Flame Horizon that happened in the mid lane against Yunbi, but when we get towards those late stages, we're approaching the 40-minute mark. That CS difference didn't really matter anymore, and Yunbi was able to get to that late stage where he was doing so much damage. We saw so many times Daption was caught out by himself, thinking, oh, I can just go into the jungle, get a ward here and there. Oh, hey, look, it's LeBlanc, and LeBlanc, he's down, he's dead. It happened many times throughout this entire series, and Yunbi just played that assassin role perfectly. That's all I can really say about it.
Yunbi definitely felt like the star of the show, I had to say.
Mm-hmm.
The small bits of positioning.
I love them both.
No, they're just so gosh darn good, man. It's and exactly like you guys were saying, small bits of positioning and reaching the later stages of the game, it just seemed as the game got so intense, we were looking at it thinking like anything could really could have happened here. Like small little fights, a lot of those later team fights were played on mere inches too. It really depended on who got caught first and whether or not either Bradley could one-shot somebody or Yimby could come in from the backside and do the exact same, or maybe just get 2 or 3 more though. Because once those chain lands, that means that you'll be locked down and sent back to the base. So the terrifying prospects across the board. Like there was one small thing which where I was looking at both Wildcard and with GGA and thinking like, how do you guys play? How do you guys kind of like transition towards the later stage of the game? Because it really depending on Wildcard as to what they found worth it. And one thing specifically was how they took the dragon and kind of like eliminating the fear of having just that later stage like dragon soul prospect not really being GG's favorite, but instead they lost that top inhib too. And although it's a long lane, right, then you're looking at Baron control, and one good Baron definitely could have led to just GG just like running over the entire game. But Deathstrokes, looking past this game a little bit right now, I feel like if GG do this in game 2, it's like Wildcard definitely have a chance to come back. But right now, I'm not even too sure who really has the overall advantage in this series because like both games were so different.
Both games were very different in the way we approached the draft. More specifically, out of Golden Guardians Academy, because right, we saw Niles with the Ornn in the top lane. They had a lot of hard engage. They had a lot of bruisery fights. They just couldn't get him. Now that they played this mid-game skirmish where you're trying to tear apart Wildcard, and you have Yunbi, who is pretty much being Arrow's nightmare. In some of those fights, you could see Arrow trying his hardest to DPS, but Yunbi would just chase him down. Even though he wouldn't get the kill, that still stops Arrow from being able to put out damage. I think you saw the same thing on the opposite side of the map at some points as well, when Bradley was able to just press R onto poor Prismal and be able to take him down. So the change in style, I really like out of Golden Guardians Academy. I like the fact that they tried to meet Wildcard at their own win condition, and they played it pretty well, except it still got to the late game and played to Golden Guardian style, which is just so funny to me. But yeah, it's definitely a good transition. It's definitely a good adjustment in the drafts while going against Wildcard.
Which really, it just shows how much flexibility that Golden Guardians Academy have. While they do play the same style every game, they are able to play it with different champions. And I feel like if they change Yunbi to less of an assassin role, and then they put more dive towards the top as well as the jungle, then there's a lot that Golden Guardians Academy can do to get onto Arrow, because especially as the last game went on, it felt like who gets to Arrow, that's going to be the win. And since it happened, they did grab that. If they change up who is able to dive, that's what's going to give Golden Guardians Academy a little bit of a different edge going into Game 3.
And before we cut it to a short break, there's one thing I want to do with you all, which we didn't get to do before, though, is I want your prediction. I want to be able
we're
to
dead
see
even now, so
like, who you
Yeah.
have exactly. Yeah, so like it's 1-1, so that's not, and like with such two different games, it's not as though y'all can really have a bias towards the other. So Deathstrokes, I'll start off with you on this one here, man. Who did you have maybe going in, and has that opinion changed?
I have Wildcard going in. I'm honestly just voting with my heart right here. I love a lot of the stuff they've been able to do alongside the summer, getting all those first place finishes, but it's the last amateur team, more importantly than anything else, and it would break my heart to see them fall right here. They've been doing such a phenomenal run, so Wildcard, strong team. I was hoping for a 3-2.
Wildcard are a very strong team, and I gotta agree with you. I'm gonna go with my heart, but my heart is attached to my brain, and my brain says Golden Guardians Academy are still favored going into this matchup. I feel like watching the last 2 games, it doesn't really influence my opinion at all. It still feels like Golden Guardians Academy can take this series. It might be a little closer than I would have thought. Maybe 3-1 going into today. Now I'm thinking more of a 3-2, very close competitive series, but it's still Golden Guardians Academy that seem a little more on their game today.
I do, you know what? Y'all both raise actually really good points here, because like you're saying, just amateur right now with the last standing team, trying to make what is essentially the final stand to make sure that there is that semi-pro presence here, even with such a stacked roster. And on the other end, GGA, their Proving Grounds run has been nothing to scoff at all. And every single game, they've looked more impressive. This is a tough call. So I'm not going to make it. And I'm instead going to say that we're all winners. I'm going to set it to a short break. And when we come back, we'll have champs like in the casters on the other side.
Hello, hello, welcome back, and look at that. We are right into the Champions Select for Game 3 between Wildcard Red and Golden Guardians Academy. The teams opted to stay on the same sides. Wildcard Red had choice this time, and they wanted blue, and look at that, Ziggs banned again.
I feel like we're going to be seeing something very similar to yesterday, Alex. Dignitas and Immortals stay on the same side the entire series, and I wouldn't be surprised if we saw that exact same trend happen today. And yesterday, we saw some very strong themes in terms of champions that were picked, champions that were banned. I'm expecting similar things today, as we do have the same first 2 bans as we had in the first 2 games. Are we going to go for all the same 5 bans?
3 for 3. Come on, Renekton. Where's the Renekton ban? GGA, just power on through it. We know that you want to ban it. It's okay, we understand. No need to think about it. Just bop, bop, bop.
No thinking, just doing. There is no try.
Yes, just do.
Right? Something Yoda.
Or
Star
me.
Wars.
Or just me when it's like flat. Oh, hey, look!
Ooh,
Change,
okay. But that doesn't
adaptation.
mean they can still ban a third, right?
Yeah,
you know,
but that's
just the
different. That's
order of
already
the
different.
bans.
It's already different. It's already different.
Does it
It's already
count?
scrapped. We're new playbook. We're tossing the book down on the ground. New playbook.
You're gonna want to pick that up. That's where all your notes are, Alex.
I know. I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to do that without getting off camera.
Well, we do got the Rise ban. Wildcard Red are at least sticking to their same playbook, and with
I have
Thresh
shoes
banned
on,
out,
too.
it's
This is impossible.
uh-oh. I believe in you. I know you're very tall, but
Damn, that's what makes this
there
hard.
is.
Try to
You
close
do have
the
a
book.
waist.
Okay,
You
keep
have a
talking
waist?
while I'm doing this.
Okay. Well, we do got the Twisted Fate banned away, and because of that, it means that the LeBlanc not going to be going over to Golden Gardens, but instead going to be going over to Wildcard Red. Now, typically, the answer to this is the Rise. That's already been banned away from Wildcard, and so we're going to see a pretty significantly new draft. I feel it's a lot harder to play without the Thresh and Gold.
I'm
just
making this
watching
happen.
you
Look
like
at this.
shuffle.
Look at this. Ha ha. Ha ha. I did it. I got it. And look at that. LeBlanc
Okay.
picked Lissandra being contemplated on the other side, locked in fact, for Yunbi to have the counter matchup against LeBlanc.
Important question for you, Alex. Are you wearing socks?
I'm wearing shoes.
You're wearing shoes? Okay, that's pretty impressive. I know a lot of people who just go down there and pick it up with their toes, like their extra fingers.
Well, that's what I was.
do that quite
it would
a
have
bit.
been so much easier had I not been wearing shoes. That's what I was saying. It's
There
like,
you go.
this is
Yeah. That's
really
why,
difficult.
give you the applause.
Thank you.
Anyway, LeBlanc, Lissandra, Rakan going to be their first 3 picks here for Wildcard Red versus Golden Guardians Academy. And I know a lot of people have very disparate opinions on whether or not Lissandra is a good pick into LeBlanc. Yes, it does have the point-and-click stun, which does make it very targeted at the LeBlanc, and it makes it difficult for Bradley to go in. But we've also seen a lot of LeBlanc still thrive in this matchup anyway, because you are able to blow up a lot of people, and unfortunately, Lissandra can only ult herself. She can't ult somebody else in order to keep them alive.
This is true. This is something that GGA are going to have to play around, and I'm curious to see what they pick around that, since Lissandra also isn't going to be inherently the most damage for AP damage source. You need something additional usually when you have Lissandra, or you're going to have something that hard scales into the mid to late game in your bot lane that can really overcome that, especially when you look at there's Trundle and Braum on the other side, meaning also Ornn probably not likely to be picked by GGA.
Very true, and I also feel like this Braum pick coming in from Daption says to me that he's not necessarily feeling super confident after that last game, right? Braum is not the most exciting thing into the Kron. Typically, we're looking at something like the Leona in particular as kind of your go-to going up against the Rakan. Ooh! Alright, I'll let you talk, but I can tell you're excited.
Yes, this is something that Rosethorn has been playing quite some time here in the Proving Grounds, into Trundle specifically, making sure they can really burn through Trundle at any point, even getting through a Braum. Then, it's technically a slight counter to the LeBlanc. You're not going to easily be able to assassinate someone when you have Lamb's Respite up and available to pop that immediately before anyone gets burst.
So now the question then becomes, how does Wildcard Red deal with the Kindred? Typically, the major counter picks we look at are things with knockbacks and things that just can kill people really effectively after, because they tend to come out with a lot of low HP bars. With LeBlanc already picked up, LeBlanc can just wait for the Lamb's Respite to go down before using the double distortion and murdering everybody, and it's really hard to find knockbacks. You can't pick the Lee Sin into the jungle anymore. The Trundle is playable in the top lane, but not something Brandini has shown before. Gragas is not something we've been seeing popular in the meta, and Pyke is one of the other major counter picks. Can't really be picked because we already have LeBlanc in the mid lane and Braum in the bottom.
So I will say this. Now, this you can disagree with me on this one, but I'm looking at GGA's composition, And to me, this screams Prismal Syndra. I see Kindred picked. You're going to have your 80 carry from the jungle right there, and you need something that makes up a lot for that AP damage. You don't have to, especially now that we're seeing Lissandra go more for Electrocute, but I just have this feeling that Prismal is screaming to me, go back on to that Syndra. The only problem is they don't know what's on the other side.
I agree, and that becomes very dangerous when you are looking to play these kind of mage bottoms. You do need to have a decent laning phase for it, and with the Ophelia still up, we've been seeing Arrow playing that quite a bit. You do want to make sure that you, one, can use it as a denial pick, and also give yourself a lot of range. But as you said, we are a little bit light on the magic damage coming out from the side of Golden Guardians Academy, but Jinx, absolutely great pick into Kindred, because you get everybody low, suddenly you gotta make a death rocket to blow everybody up.
And this is something Arrow loves to play as well. We've seen him play some crazy ADCs. The Draven, he's busted out already. The Jinx, he's played a couple of times to great success. So here, if that does get locked in, like you said, great into stuff like Kindred, because even if you have Lion's Fight, you're only going to be on that for so long. Eventually, it's going to go away, and you're going to be able to pop them with the rocket. But Renekton, not touched this time at all. Not completely gone through the draft here all the way to the bitter end.
I typically feel like when we look at Niles, the go-to counterpick into Renekton right now is absolutely Gnar, and we saw that he had some mixed performance in the last game. He definitely was at the spot where they were actually able to win the game, but we also saw him get blown up before he was able to do anything in some of these fights, and now he's going to be bringing it out once again into Brandini's Renekton. We've seen this ban quite a bit up against Brandini, and so Niles feels a little bit more comfortable now, thinking that they have bigger issues to tackle than this top lane. And it also becomes very easy for Brandini to potentially look at dives a little bit later on if they can get Bradley to roam up. So really got to focus really heavily on how Bradley is able to exit the lane in order to try and affect these side lanes.
And that's the biggest thing whenever I see LeBlanc is not how you're able to play it when assassinating. It's about how you play it in the lane phase, moving around the map to try to impact other places.
It's very hard for them to do it in their own lane, and we also got to pay attention on the opposite side to how Rosethorn is able to move around, because it is two very, not necessarily mobile champs, but very fluid champs. They want to be in different places at different times in the game. LeBlanc wants to affect the lanes, and Rosethorn, depending on how he's able to move around, can stifle that or go for some of his own marks.
And we'll find all that after a break. Stick around. We'll have Game 3 Wildcard Red Golden Guardians Academy. Hello, hello, welcome back. We are on the Rift. It is Game 3, Round 4, elimination on the line. One team has a chance to go one step closer to getting top 4 in the Proving Grounds. Making their statement here is going to be crucial if they want victory.
Every single game at this point, Alex, is going to matter, right? We're back to a best of 3 at this point because both teams are 1-1. Very reactive draft coming in from Golden Guardians on the red side, and they have to play it in such a way that justifies not necessarily going for a lot of these proactive picks. They're definitely looking for ways for Wildcard to kind of set the tone this time and really punish any mistakes they make.
And this is a team that has punished many a mistake to run through the gauntlet of the lower bracket to get to this point. No other team has run it quite like they have. They have taken out many top-seeded teams along the way. Cloud9, FlyQuest, both falling to GGA. The next step would be taking out Wildcard, but Wildcard, they are here to claim glory. They are here to take the mantle from NoOrg as the best amateur team.
We also have to note that Wildcard have already knocked multiple amateur teams down to the lower bracket. 100 Thieves next were knocked out by Wildcard right to the top side. I know we already got a fight.
Fight and flash. Rosethorn does not have a way out. It is first blood for Winston. The flash away from Prismal. The invade might have been late out of Wildcard, but it punished beautifully Kindred's weakness.
Already we're starting to see this Braum coming to fruition, right? You go for a lot of these early game plays, a flash forward from both Deption and Winston. They really just need to get the jungler out, and we'll see how Winston pals after this, right? They know that he knows exactly where he's starting. He's going to be doing 2 camps, so he's guarding a bot lane.
Nice smite, though, from Winston. You saw how much health he got back from that Gromp. That was perfectly timed, too, against the Ignite. Had the Ignite come out first before the smite, they probably could have killed Winston.
They definitely could. And as we take a look at this once again, notice how aggressive they actually packed here. Bradley looking for Yumby, but they're also trying to make sure that they can do this with all of their members all at once. And Bradley might have given up the game, but they already show here, and they already just get it on a blind Q, landing onto this Kindred. Not a whole lot more for Rosethorn to do. He had to flash almost instantly, and we'll have to see what he does to path afterwards. Winston can look for very aggressive plays, and look at this. Rosethorn not even looking to invade at all as he just clears out his top side, get the red Raptors now going to the bottom side where he doesn't have a blue buff.
I was about to say, how can you invade as Kindred at this point? They just have no way to fight back against Trundle. You're hoping for the coin flip. You're hoping you can get that early stack on Scuttlecrab bot now.
Well, there's definitely time, right? Because you know that your bottom lane is going to come up and try and interrupt Winston because he's going for the Gromp. Probably could have gone in for the blue because the fact that Winston's going to be losing a lot of time off of that. Instead, Winston gets the read that, you know, Rosethorn is going to be topside, isn't going for his own side of the jungle, and Winston, you know, plays it safe, goes for his own red buff, and now has done buff, buff, buff. And now is going to be picking up the Scuttlecrab on the top side, and also his bottom lane are going to be denying the Scuttlecrab on the bottom side, so this just feels like a huge win in the early game coming up for Wildcard.
Massive win. I mean, even if Rosethorn lost out on the coin flip, it was the stack on the top side for that Scuttlecrab. Losing out on any Scuttlecrabs, getting double scuttled like that, even if it wasn't Winston getting both of them, is going to put this Kindred so far behind. The scaler that needs to get these stacks, to get these early ganks, to get more and more pressure onto the enemy. Look how far you have to have Rosethorn go just to be able to get anything. It's going to be some time before we even see Rosethorn really impact anything on the map.
I do want to temper expectations a little bit, right? It is important that Kindred gets these stacks, but it's not that important, right? There's a lot of short range. True, the blue buff is important, but the big thing is like this, Kindred will still be able to interact in fights because Renekton has to come in, Trundle has to come in, Braum has to come in, so Kindred will always have targets to hit. The only problem will be, will they be able to interact with Jinx if Jinx is constantly playing at max range? And that's where the marks are going to start being a little bit more important. But of course, you have other people to do that. That's what Aphelios is for. That's what Gnar's going to be doing in order to try and disrupt that backline.
That's fair. You know, that is very fair, and we got to keep our eyes on how Rosethorn does that in the mid game. But for now, it's going to be some time before we actually see that. I'm going to look on the other side at how Wildcard are winning out in so many of these lanes. Arrow Daption constantly pushing back Prismal and Newbie allows Winston all this time to start up early dragon stacking.
We are seeing with them with the priority. Newbie notices with the red trinket, but he's going to be taking a decent, actually almost no damage, right? That shield is going to keep him relatively healthy while Winston does do this dragon. It's a cloud, so it does hurt pretty badly, but he doesn't need anything more. And look at this in the mid lane.
Flash in, nice Ring of Frost. This could be a nice stack for Rosethorn to already get in his cap.
Nice. Very impressed they're able to find that. I'm a little bit surprised Bradley didn't go for a flash at any point, and Yumby still has access to that ultimate, so they can potentially look to make it happen again. But Winston now coming bottom lane. This is a potential TP ward if Brandini wants to come down.
Unfortunately for Rosethorn, didn't change the stack onto Bradley, but either way, still an amazing gank setup by Yunby to help out Rosethorn.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the things, right? I've touched on it a lot. FSN Saber touches on it a lot, right? You got to prime yourself for if this happens, then I'll do this. Bradley needed to be careful. Oh, Winston coming down.
What a double knockup, but it's going to be the TP behind. Pillar to interrupt Prismal and Newbie from getting towards their turret.
Nice.
Two should die with this dive. Yunby's a little too late. Uses the Frozen Tune onto Brandini. Lots of damage with the help of the turret to make it a 1-4-2 trade. On the other side, Bradley uses that blast going with the flash in. Yunby will be tagged by the chains. The follow-up coming in from Dabson.
Nice.
And another chain, too, from Bradley. With the zap connecting for Bradley to take his first kill.
Very clean play coming through from Bradley, knowing he just needs to hold Lissandra in place long enough for backup to arrive using the chains. And a lot of people are coming down to the bottom lane, but notice once again, Brandini had a bit of an issue earlier on. Oh, Rosethorn's here. We'll talk about that later.
Look how low Arrow and Daption both are missing the Winter's Bite too, but Rosethorn is only level 4. Prismo only level 4. They split their attention, trying to get 2-4-1. The dive not going to work out for Rosethorn. He had to flash away. Arrow gets the zap connected. Will take out Prismal. Prismal getting a kill off that one. Rosethorn might not have gotten an assist, but it all is perfectly fine for them.
It could have been a little bit better, right? Daption does live, but just as importantly, not going to be getting the stack over to Rosethorn because they needed to keep him alive. Prismal ends up picking up the kill before the assist comes through. That means that nothing goes over to Rosethorn during his time bottom lane. But now, also pay attention to how these waves are bouncing. Prismal getting a kill at a great time. It's going to be stifled a little bit because the cannon minion is here. You're not going to be losing as many minions to the turret, but this early dive that we see coming in from Wildcard, one, very indicative. Winston spent a lot of time down here, and a great pillar once again. His pillar placement absolutely immaculate this entire time, and if it hadn't been matched by Yumby, they would have gotten away with it too.
But they didn't. The Mystery Gang was able to solve the crime there. Even if they do trade eventually a 3-4-2 in that fight, GGA at least get some gold back for themselves.
It's also going over to Bradley, right? We got to pay attention to where these kills are going. 2 kills over to Brandini, 1 kill to Winston, 1 kill to Bradley, 4-3. Golden Guardian's also a little bit desperate. The fact that Prismal gets that solo kill is nice. He gets the gold and the experience, not a whole lot more.
Looking familiar here in the mid lane. Frozen Tomb used onto Bradley. That's a lot of damage with that Orb of Distortion. Bradley surviving this game this time around, and Winston on the other side could use that pillar placement again. Genby's pretty far without a claw either. Nice pillar. Winston is perfect on these each and every time.
Oh man, Magical, you and I were talking before the game even started about the difference coming through between Aftershock and the Electrocute on the Lissandra. It feels like with just a little bit more damage, they might have been able to get Bradley there if Rosethorn had been able to commit, but with the Aftershock, not going to have it there, and this is part of why this matchup is so strenuous all the time. You have to be able to actually lock down all these kills, or you're just going to struggle. Brandini pushing Niles back a little bit until he realizes that Rosethorn is there, and now that he has the priority, now that Daption is also in the area, they're going to be the ones starting up this Rift Trail.
Priority top lane, priority mid lane. Easy take on these neutral objectives at this time by Wildcard. Looking reminiscent of game 1, but GGA do not want to let this go quietly. They're on the other side, and Niles has gone mega lower into the wall. They've got a lot of damage onto Brandini, even Rosethorn in the middle of it, but they've lost Niles the entire time, and Rosethorn's going to be the next casualty. Even though you had them ever show up, they don't have the damage to take out Brandini. You have lost Newbie. Yunby getting chased down to the smite to slow him down and chomp them up.
Rosethorn, your ultimate needs to be pressed in order to do anything. Kindred's ultimate is so crucial to finding all these team fights, but Wildcard are able to lock him down and blow him up before the ultimate comes through, and that just makes this fight that looked potentially close. We saw Brandini go super low in that into a total disaster, and Brandini now with the Rift Trail gonna crash it. He's gonna be a big recipient of this win. The teleport not necessarily coming through from Niles just quite yet, but that's another play going down, and Brandini can come back here in just just a second and effectively get himself another kill's worth of gold off of this Rift Herald. But watch how this plays. Niles starts off getting a lot of damage, but he is getting jumped on. This teleport comes in from Newbie on the other side, and then the damage is just too much coming out from Wildcard. They don't respect it on the side of Golden Guardians, and unfortunately for them, it's going to be this huge lead already coming out to Wildcard, and we've seen how impressive they are when they're able to build one.
Worse there, Josh. I know why Rosethorn did not use Lamb's Respite. They knew that if that was popped, Brandini heals back up, and you don't kill him regardless. That's the idea going through their mind, but it's either you let him live a little bit longer, or you all die, and unfortunately for GGA, they took the latter and are now suffering a 4,000 gold deficit at 11 minutes.
This is a pretty brutal slacking already coming through from Wildcard. Start off at minute 1, and now they're looking to fight for this Ocean Dragon.
This is not looking good when you had to flash away, even if you're able to get the objective. The TP's going to
Teleport
come
from Gnar.
through, but Niles does not have the rage bar necessary to make this engage re-engage. They have to be careful because Brandini, he's not even bothering. He doesn't even have TP. There's no reason to draw him back. He's got Rift Herald, and that should be a secondary charge with the help of Shelly.
Okay, well, this is pretty good coming out for Wildcard. Even though they don't get the dragon, it goes over to Golden Guardian, so their dragon stack is a little bit slower. They are so far ahead in terms of gold at this point. As we just touched on, Brandini going to get the second charge. Not going to be able to get the full-on turret, but this is a huge experience differential coming in the top lane at this point. 2 level already for Renekton over Gnar, and what is supposed to be a Gnar-favored matchup in isolation.
Yeah, 3-1 and 3-2 for Brandini, having a sizable CS lead over his opposition. Look at the difference between the two. 3,000 between the top laners.
Oh man, the jungle and mid lane really making up the rest of it. You're seeing about 1.5 coming in the jungle, and again about 500 in the mid lane. So it's just a big lead kind of across the top half of the map. Divine Sunder completed before Rosethorn gets up past the Noon Quiver.
That is one lead for the side of Wildcard, but this is also what we've seen time and time again with this roster. Winston and Daption, the two that usually started all off, even if Brandini's been a part of a lot of the kills this time around, is Winston who's really getting them into this early game on a huge lead.
And it's fascinating to watch like where the kill participation is coming from. In their first win, we saw Bradley really overperforming the normal statistics that he has throughout Proving Grounds, right? He was looking at about 50% in terms of kill participation. He had really high, and this time it's all Winston all the time. Teleport's available from Brandini if they want it.
They do have that, and look at how Brandini's even posturing right now on the minimap. He was waiting for the TP play to happen, but they fall back not wanting to commit because once they saw Rosethorn behind, the dive just wasn't going to work out too well, as Niles now has to be careful because Brandini has that level lead still over him. Can easily get the stun as he's about to go Mega. That Brandini will get himself a little bit of distance away.
And we're starting to see why this matchup is Gnar favored. Even down 3 kills, even down a level, Niles is still able to go for a lot of aggressive trades because he is able to keep his distance. He's not necessarily going for, these all-in, jump on top of Renekton style fights because those are never going to be winning. But Wildcard at the same time taking a lot of control here. They're clearing out some vision, and we'll see if Golden Guardians want to do anything about it. Instead, it's just going to be a Scuttle Crab going over to Wildcard. And now, Niles without the Rage Bar in a long lane does need to be careful because Winston and Bradley can move on.
I'm kind of waiting to see what Niles will do to answer that. Just the fact that Winston's top lane playing so much around Brandini at this moment, understanding they have such a sizable lead, and even with that, as you had mentioned, that the Gnar-Renekton matchup isn't really the best for Brandini despite having this lead, so they can threaten Niles. They can force him back towards this weakened turret and make sure that he is not going to be a threat for some time.
It also means that Brandini, as he pushes forward, can be really aggressive and actually moving with Winston in order to take away a lot of these camps. It is important that Rosethorn has time to farm, has camps to farm, and when you just have lost a top lane so convincingly like this, it becomes very difficult for them to actually defend the northern quadrant, and Rosethorn just losing half of his income every single time. That's why you're seeing him down here in the bottom lane looking to try and make sure they are going to be able to pick up this turret. Luckily for Golden Guardians, there's nobody defending. It's going to be easily going down for Golden Guardians.
My big problem is that Rosethorn has been put in such a hole at this moment. He is 1-2, and you talked about it earlier. That Noon Quiver came at the same time the Divine Sunderer had been built on the other side. That is how far Rosethorn is, let alone the stacking game, let alone getting those souls stacked up to be that much more of a threat. I'm just wondering how GGA are going to start helping out their jungler.
Well, they tried. They really tried. Remember early on, they tried to affect multiple ganks into the mid lane. They were trying to use the ultimate from Yummy to lock down Bradley. Unfortunately, they just didn't work out very much. There was one successful one, and then after that, it was all Wildcard. It was all Bradley surviving over and over. And at this point, LeBlanc is too far ahead of this Lissandra for Lissandra to really be doing a whole lot, right? They're going towards the Everfrost in order to get a little bit more utility, but as we already identified, there's not a lot of magic damage coming out from Golden Guardians, and that allows Brandini and Winston to be just even more tanky in these upcoming fights.
Lissandra's behind, Kindra's behind, Nar's behind. The only lane that is slightly even is the spot lane. Jinx versus Aphelios, where both of them are going to be great in the mid to late game. You're going to get popped by LeBlanc if you're an Aphelios.
Oh, this is why this matchup is not great from a lot of people. Look at this. Yumby can't do anything.
Bradley. Okay, Bradley didn't want to try to attempt the dive. It's still risky going against Yunbi. Still has Aftershock available if need be with the Ring of Frost, then Frozen Tomb on top of him. But Bradley, like you were talking about, just getting so much damage onto Yunbi, forcing him underneath this turret. Even if they have the TP and could make a play around this dragon, they're so far behind that they have to wait it out for a while before they can even hope to actually fight.
That becomes very difficult, right? Jinx, you know, a lot of people think of her as scaling super heavily into the late game, and it's true. She is one of the better AD carries later on in the game, but she really spiked really hard around 2 items as well. The Super Mega Death Rocket becomes very difficult for a lot of teams to deal with, and the range caps out at only level 9. So after that, it's just the fact that your items are super self-synergistic, and we're already seeing Arrow rapidly approaching spots where they are going to be outranging everybody on Golden Guardians, and this Gnar, when they're behind, doesn't have the same kind of threat onto Arrow's Jinx in future fights.
No, and with the Gale Force too, for Arrow to have a little bit extra safety to get away from Newbie. No range to speak of at the moment for Rosethorn. Really, your only range is going to be from Prisma, and he has got to have the right guns in order to actually utilize that. Everything's so situational for GGA at this point, and they're still sitting at 6,000 gold behind, and we're not even 20 minutes into the game.
Well, they still have a little bit of time before they have to be super worried about the scaling coming through from Wildcard, right? There is a Dragon coming up in 4 minutes, but that's also 4 minutes where Golden Guardians, they can try and make things happen, and they probably should, right? You want to be rotating Yumbi around because they do not win fights in this really long lane up against Bradley in the extended 1v1s. You really need to find opportunities to actually use that ultimate before his damage just falls off a cliff entirely. He's got an Everfrost, and again, that's going to be giving you a lot of utility, but it doesn't necessarily increase your damage all that much.
No, and here, Rosethorn still just farming up the best he can, getting whatever scraps are left over by Winston, who has that experience lead. Pretty much everyone on the side of Wildcard now has an experience lead, gold lead, item lead. Everything is coming up Wildcard Gaming, and they are just playing this patiently because they can pop an eye rip there at the top lane and easily take down a tier 2.
There's a lot of people on the opposite side. This might be a second crash coming through. Winston and Bradley posturing very aggressively, and Rosethorn not backing, so they are going to crash this. I don't think they get the full turret, but that's still going to be putting it down below the 1,000 mark, so it's only going to regenerate to a third of its HP at maximum. That makes it very easy for them to revisit this relatively soon because of how strong their splitters are.
And this is putting GGA even further and further behind on tempo on the game of where they can actually play, what they can actually use to get anything back away from Wildcard. That's why I keep saying this is reminiscent of Game 1 between these two teams, where Wildcard contained and controlled GGA so well, so early on. This game was even more accelerated than the last one.
But I still need to try and end the game, right? It is still a situation where they don't have a ton of great tools to get fights started, right? They do have a lot of great pick tools, they do have decent wave clear, they do have decent poke, but the best way for them to actually get a fight started is for Daption to throw out the ultimate, and that's not particularly exciting for Wildcard. They need to find a way to actually go in, and Golden Guardians are so effective at defensively fighting with the utility that both Kindred and Lissandra provide that this game might actually be a lot longer despite this initial gold lead if Wildcard aren't able to find ways to bring Golden Guardians out of their base.
I feel like Wildcard can just hit him with the bank. They are so far ahead. 7,000 gold now at 20 minutes. That turret in the top lane is weakened, easily going to be taken by Brandini or Bradley if ever any member of GGA goes away from that lane.
Well, now they're trying to attack Niles in the bottom lane. Bradley looking for it. There's not a lot of members of Golden Guardians who could potentially respond. Instead, going to be backing away. And now that the dragon is a lot closer, Wildcard are at 2 dragons already. They're halfway to the soul. And Daption...
Daption, I'm looking at Arrow. He just 2-tapped Rosethorn right there. We only have Gale Force and a couple components in the inventory for Arrow, and you can see how much damage he was able to do to Rosethorn. Moonlight Vigil is going to come out, but it's going to be a nice knockup onto Prismal, the root as well, onto Rosethorn. Rocket going to pop the shield from Prismal at the Zap 2, going to force back GGA yet again towards their base.
A couple of ultimates expended, and with less than 50 seconds left before the next dragon, it's not going to be tools that Wildcard are going to have. They will still have almost everything else. They still have a lot of summoner spells, Arrow relatively safe, but his damage is significantly lower now. This is why they're posturing so aggressively to control these choke points. They want to find unfair fights.
Winston's pillar placement is absolutely immaculate. You talked about it earlier, but every single time interrupting things like the battle dance there from Newbie, or just previously,
Brandini.
but now Brandini, he's a bit far, flashed away, still alive. He might be able to survive. He's got a lot of damage back on it to Gunby. Newbie and Rosethorn are right there in the wings, but Brandini, he's in the middle of all 4, and he continues to fight. Gunby cutting him back. They've got Prismal to help shut him down and gift the gold over to the jungler.
That's going to be a lot of gold going through, but it took them a lot of time. How much are they going to be losing for it? They're losing the mid lane turret, they're losing the bottom lane turret, they're going to be losing this Infernal Dragon if Wildcard do want to take it. Rosethorn coming around on the side looking for a potential flank, but it's very hard for him to have a flank all by himself as a marksman, and Wildcard going to be coming out with a big lead. It looks like Arrow tried to snipe Yunbi on the recall, but it is going to be a lot of gold going over to Wildcard and a lot of map pressure they can use again to try and draw Golden Guardians away from their defensive structures.
As long as you're able to draw them out, bait them into your fights, Wildcard can consistently control this game like they have been previous series, in the previous game in Game 1, in this series as well. GGA, though, this is a patient team. This is a team that understands how to play from a deficit. Hell, in Game 1, at an 11k deficit, they nearly were able to drag back the game with beautiful fights after fights. The only problem was they were so far behind that it would have taken a nearly infinitesimal amount just to draw it back.
Well, now Wildcard are also trying to eliminate opportunities for Golden Guardians to do that. They're continuing to take away Rosethorn's jungle, and it becomes so difficult for the members of Golden Guardians to even face check around. Now, it's also important to note Wildcard Arrow's item choices. He's going for the rapid fire cannon as his second item. He's actually building in such a way that he doesn't expect a whole lot of open fights. He's not going for a Rudings. He's not going for a PD. It's not a Wit's End because, of course, there's not that much magic damage coming through. He's going for the poke option of these items. He just wants to tag people individually, one by one, because he doesn't really feel like Golden Guardians are going to be coming in and fighting him, where other items might be a little bit more effective.
Well, I feel like this also goes back to the point you were talking about with Rosethorn. When he's able to get these stacks, the added range that helps out Kindred, well, it's now that much more difficult to actually get on top of anyone. Bradley, he's gotten himself caught out. That's not looking too damn good for you, even with the double distortion over the wall. The flash coming in. Rosethorn wants to be able to chase him down. Just one more. Ha ha! You can't get Bradley.
Oh man, this is so rough for the side of Golden Guardians. Yumbi has constantly been looking for these. He's getting the ultimates, and that's what this matchup is for, but not actually finding the kills just means it's so difficult. Brandini looking for a 1v1, it's a 2v1.
I was about to say, it's Winston on the other side. This ain't no 1v1 for poor Niles. He wanted to have the duel, but he gets smacked by a club in the face. An unstoppable Winston can easily turn now to take away more jungle of Rosethorn.
Golden Guardians, they're trying to find something, but again, one of the biggest concepts you always have to have in League of Legends is who is going to be the play. Golden Guardians commit 4 people towards the top side, ended up getting nothing, and without a huge response coming from Wildcard, they don't necessarily know where all the members of Wildcard are. Niles, he's the person who is the play. He's the person that Wildcard are looking to attack, and doesn't necessarily respect it, doesn't back up in time, and just gives Winston an opportunity to calm down. It's something that benefits Niles a lot of the time. Disrespect when he's the play, he gets a lot of advantages that a lot of other top laners wouldn't normally get, but it's also something that a lot of top laners don't do because things like that happen. You get jumped on.
I'm actually just watching Rosethorn as he clears out mid lane just to make sure the minion wave doesn't crash, but it's also because how far behind he still remains from Winston. That takes away gold from Prismal, that delays even more. And then, once you leave, Prismal didn't have the backup in mid lane, so it's going to be Arrow and Winston easily taking down another structure and adding more gold to their pockets.
9,000 gold for Wildcard. Oh, Niles got to be very careful at this point. He's got an Executioner's Calling to try and help his laning phase, extended laning, splitting laning phase up against this Renekton, reducing a lot of the healing that Brandini will get, but also not necessarily going to be super effective against the rest of Wildcard. It can help up against Winston, but not necessarily going to be great against Arrow and Bradley, who don't have a ton of healing in their kits. Now, I also want to point out, we called this out earlier, a lot of magic damage is missing from Golden Guardians, and this allows Wildcard to build not one, but two Warden's Mails on Winston. He's got the Randuin's also building towards a Frozen Heart, doubling down super heavily on his ability to just stop all of the auto attack damage that's coming out from Niles, Rosethorn, and Prismal.
And where you can argue that Winston's build is a lot cheaper, same with Brandini's build comparatively on the other side for Niles and Rosethorn. That is a massive, massive item lead that each of them has over their opponents. Having 3.5 items for Brandini, 3 items for Winston, and only an item and a half for Niles, and 2 items for Rosethorn, just shows you the deficit they still remain at. And I just can't see a way they're going to be able to claw back in outside of a miracle pick.
Oh,
that looked awkward from Niles, though he's still alive. The TP, way late. They've already lost Daption. Niles goes Mega just in time. Bradley's able to take him out before the Lancer Spike comes out. Arrow's on the other side. Look how low everyone on GGA is. The Zap connects.
Arrow.
He's excited. Arrow. He wants to clean up house here against GGA without Yunbi, without the members anywhere. The flash in. Zap not connecting onto Prismal, but doesn't matter when you got the slows, when you got the dashes, when you got the kills with the Crocodile to sink the teeth in for an ace out of Wildcard.
What do Wildcard want here? They have so many options. They can go for either of them. Looks like the call is to go for the Infernal Soul at this point. 27 minutes into the game. They are going to be grabbing this, and then they can also use it to turn towards this Baron that is still available. They pull Golden Guardians out, and it looks like Golden Guardians, they thought they had a man advantage. Niles just hops over. This is one of the most bizarre things I've seen in a long time. He has to think that people aren't really there. Maybe Winston is isolated, because otherwise, you never go for this play. Instead, they are able to set something up where Prismal's able to hit beautifully right up until Brandini comes in, has the damage, and even though they get a lot of value out of the Lamb's Respite, it's not enough when Brandini and Arrow are there to clean up afterwards. You just need to have the damage in order to kill one of them. Suddenly, Arrow resets on the entire team.
They got smacked in the face by the wallet. Even if it looked like they had the miracle pick, they took out Daption. They couldn't have the fight there. It was 2 for 5, and now Infernal Soul is on the side of Wildcard. This means not only with that massive gold lead they have, but having all the basic stats you get from having 3 Infernal Dragons and the Soul. Wildcard, they're playing pretty far out, but what can GGA do at this point? They just don't have anything that they really have that they can flex over Wildcard.
Not a lot. Niles doesn't have a bar for a while. This Gnar is tired. Not gonna be able to, just gonna kill him.
No. Flashed away, but it's Glacial Fissure onto Prismal. And this is time for cleaning up, and they want the game. They're here to dominate. They've gotten 2 more kills, and even if you got Yunbi keeping Niles alive on the other side, what's on the table? The Baron is there. The Purple Worm is the call.
Yeah, they're going to be going for it. Brandini off on the side. He's going to be the play for Wildcard. Are the members of Golden Guardians going to try and do something about Adaption? He's like, please come over here so I can jump to you, Sad B. There you go. He finally gets into the pit. But across the board, they are still having the members creating some pressure on the rest of the map. Brandini taking away some camps away here from Rosethorn, who continues to fall behind in terms of camp. And Bradley, again, so good on this LeBlanc. Guys, Sandra, it works sometimes, but it's really just hard to execute on for all of these members, and it just means that Wildcard not only taking away all of the members of Golden Guardians' lives, they get the buffs, they get the Baron, they get everything they could possibly ask for.
And we got to take a look at this replay. I mean, it starts off with Newbie just getting eviscerated by Bradley. He's got 5 levels over him.
Yeah, that's a lot. It's just 2 abilities, right? He doesn't even need to use the chains or the distortion. He uses that to try and stick onto Roaster. And watch how Prismo plays here. He gets caught by the pillar, and then he just stands and is gone, right? There's not a whole lot that can be done. Winston over and over again is showing great mastery over Trundle's pillar, constantly finding people out and preventing them from moving.
I almost feel like at this point, the real problem that you have to face is Winston's Trundle with how great he is playing this. Bradley, he's on the hunt. He is hungry. He is hungry like the wolves, but it's going to be the wolf and lamb getting back to the base just in the nick of time to avoid the wrath of Bradley, who almost assassinates Niles.
That was through a Sterix gauge too, right? There's a lot of damage coming through from Bradley, and they're trying to find something, but the problem is, for Golden Gardens, they're not even going to have an opportunity to flip over this impending Elder Dragon. It's not going to be up for quite a while, and look at that. Kindred has so few marks, it's still spawning on the Scuttle Crabs.
I don't think there's even a mark for Rosethorn. He's been completely shut out
0.
this game. Niles goes golden, and he will die upon respawning alongside Rosethorn. The rest of GGA, this base ain't yours. It's Wildcard Gaming. They've got the double kill. They've got the resets. They're excited. And we are going to game 4. The amateur team, Wildcard Gaming, taking down more and more academy teams every single time. They are here to prove everyone that they are the best in the West. They are the best in the semi-pro and make that academy on top of it all.
Just watching them play, it wasn't the speed with which we normally look at Wildcard games, but unlike some of the other ones, there was never a doubt in anybody's mind that Wildcard were not firmly in control this entire time, constantly finding people out, starting at level 1 when they were looking for the invade on Rosethorn, and unfortunately, as you said, Rosethorn, 0 marks at the end of the game, never finding that single bit of extra damage, never getting that range increase, and just great play across the board from Wildcard Gaming. I'm really looking forward to seeing how they're able to play the rest of the series, because at this rate, they are looking to be better than Golden Gardens if they can continue this.
I mean, right now, they are one step away from making sure that they are top 4. They were 1 step away previously against 100 Thieves Academy in the upper bracket, but they've got the lower bracket that they can play through. They've got one more game to secure, but GGA backs up against the wall. We'll find out how they're going to do, but we will also hear from our analyst desk after a break.